Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about trade wars, but not in the way you might think. We're going to break down how these huge international disputes can have some really surprising effects on, well, pretty much everything, from what's in your fridge to, believe it or not, global security. So, where do we start? How about right in your own kitchen? Yeah, you heard me. Could a trade war actually start there? We're going to look at some everyday things that have somehow ended up on the front lines of these massive economic conflicts. And trust me, you might be surprised by what gets caught in the crossfire. All right, first up, we're heading to the supermarket. Because let's be real, this is where these big, abstract political decisions actually start to hit home for most of us. Think about your guacamole. I mean, who doesn't love guac, right? Well, it could be in the crosshairs. If tariffs get slapped on goods from Mexico, you're looking at higher prices for pretty much every single ingredient you need. Your avocados, your tomatoes, bell peppers, jalapenos, limes, the whole thing. Suddenly, that simple party dip starts feeling like a bit of a luxury. And it's not just your dip. It gets even weirder when we start talking about breakfast. You've probably seen it yourself at the store, right? Egg prices are just soaring. They're at record highs. And all that pressure is leading to a really bizarre new trend. I mean, check this out. The USDA is projecting a 41% price hike for eggs. That's huge. And with costs getting that insane, some people are turning to a creative solution. They're renting chickens. No, I'm not kidding. You heard that right. Renting chickens. But, and here's the kicker, the math just doesn't add up. Not even close. If you look at the numbers, a typical rental costs about $795. But the eggs those hens produce, they're only worth around $480. So you're actually losing over $300. And that's not even counting the fact that, chickens are messy and they attract things like coyotes. It's a wild example, but it really shows how these economic pressures can make people do some, let's just say, creative things when they feel desperate about rising costs. So this is the part where you're probably asking, how on earth do we get from a political decision made in some capital city to people literally renting chickens at a loss, right? Well, to understand that, we have to get down to the basics. We need to look at the main weapon in any trade war. And that weapon is the tariff. It's a simple concept, really. A tariff is just a tax. A government slaps this tax on goods coming in from another country, and the whole point is to make those foreign products more expensive. The idea is to give the stuff made at home a competitive edge. Okay, here's a fun way to think about it, especially if you're a Game of Thrones fan. Imagine the Tyrells start pumping money into their googly eye industry, right? So their googly eyes get super cheap. The Lannisters can't compete. So what do? They impose a tariff, a tax, on all Tyrell googly eyes to jack the price back up. But then, of course, the Tyrells get mad and hit back with their own tariffs on Lannister products. And boom, just like that, you've got yourself a full-blown trade war. Okay, so now that we get the basic mechanic, let's look at how this stuff escalates. Because once those tariffs start flying back and forth, the economic ripple effect goes way, way beyond the supermarket. It starts to hit some much bigger ticket items. I mean, just look at the auto industry. Tariffs on imported steel or aluminum, or even just certain parts, can make car prices go through the roof. There was one case where an $80,000 Dodge Ram truck literally became a $100,000 truck overnight. A $20,000 price jump. You can imagine what that does to sales. And remember, this goes both ways. The retaliation hits just as hard. When other countries put tariffs on stuff from the US, our own industries get hammered. American farmers, for example, suddenly can't export their products. It leads to situations like the one Stephen Colbert joked about, where you have a crop like sorghum, which is normally sent overseas, that suddenly has nowhere to go. And now you're, as he put it, neck deep in a pile of our own sorghum, which is devastating for those farming communities. And this brings us to a really, really important point. Who actually gets hurt the most in all this? Because trade wars don't affect everyone the same way. The tariffs often get slapped on essential, low-end goods, things like clothing, shoes, sugar, the basics. And when the price of those things goes up, it's lower-income families who feel it the most. They have less money to spend on everything else, and that slows down the entire economy. Okay, so we've talked about groceries and cars. Now I want you to zoom way out with me. Forget about the stuff we buy for a second, and let's talk about the invisible battle being fought over the actual materials that power our entire modern world. The stakes here, they're absolutely enormous. So, here's a question for you. What could your tiny little earbuds possibly have in common with an F-35 fighter jet? I know, it sounds like a trick question, right? One fits in your pocket, the other is one of the most advanced military machines on the planet. But the answer is fascinating. It lies in these tiny but incredibly powerful materials called rare earth elements.
More specifically, an element called neodymium. When you mix it with a few other things, it creates the world's strongest magnets. And you need those super strong magnets for both. You need them to make the tiny speakers in your earbuds work, and you also need, get this, 418 kilograms of them for all the advanced guidance and sensor systems inside a single F-35.
So the next logical question is, who controls this stuff? And this is where it gets really interesting. While China mines a lot of rare earths, that's not the whole story. The critical part is the processing. And as you can see here, China processes a staggering 91% of the world's supply. That gives them a massive strategic advantage, a really powerful lever they can pull in any trade dispute. Now, you might wonder why one country has such a monopoly. Well, a big part of it is that producing rare earths is an incredibly dirty, environmentally damaging process. Just look at this chart. To produce 1 kilogram of neodymium, you emit way more carbon than you do for steel or even aluminum. Frankly, a lot of other countries just don't want to deal with that environmental fallout, and that's what allowed China to really consolidate the entire industry. So this control over the fundamental building blocks of modern technology, it's become a major piece on the geopolitical chessboard. And that raises one final, really critical question about leverage and strategy in this global game. Okay, so if China has this major choke point with rare earths, does the US have anything like that, a similar strategic advantage? Well, the answer might be yes, and it comes from a single mine in Spruce Pine, North Carolina. This one place produces pretty much the world's entire supply of ultra-high purity quartz. And without that specific quartz, you can't make the silicon wafers you need for computer chips and solar panels. It's another one of those invisible but absolutely essential resources. And that's really where this whole story leaves us. Think about the journey we just took, from guacamole in your kitchen to people renting chickens, all the way to a global struggle over the basic elements of technology. It really makes you wonder, as these trade conflicts keep shifting, is the next big fight not about the food we eat or the cars we drive, but about who actually controls the fundamental materials we need to build our future?